Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Spiritist Society of Baltimore's Saturday Live. We're so happy that each one of you are joining us this evening. Before we present our speaker of this evening, Leonardo, we wanted to do a brief opening prayer and go ahead and get started. So, dear friends, as those of you who are still logging on, who are still getting on, welcome, welcome. We're so happy that you're joining us on this blessed, awesome Saturday. So, join me in just closing your eyes if you can, if you're not driving. Hopefully, you're in a seated position at home, ready to just receive the blessings of this evening. Join me in this prayer, lifting up our thoughts and our minds to our Father, Mother God, giving thanks for our own lives, for this opportunity to love and forgive and to grow. We give thanks for this opportunity to learn in a community of like-minded and kind-hearted people. Thank you, God, for the teachings that Jesus and Spiritism brought to us. And we pray especially for our speaker this evening. May he be inspired by his spirit guide and the mentors of the SSB for the mission behind this work. May you also bless all those who've tuned in this evening in both realms of life. May they receive your warm and healing blessings. And so be it. Good afternoon, dear friends. So here we are again for another Saturday for chapters 14 and 15. We're so excited for this session 8, Leo, so I don't want to hold you back anymore. It's already 5:02, and we're really eager to hear about this chapter. And we'll just go ahead and put up on the screen here in just a second, and so we can go ahead and enjoy this evening.
Thank you, Kirsten, for the warm welcoming. And hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon and good evening for those who's going to be joining us soon. And hello for those who will be watching us in the future as well. Giving continuation to this work of a couple more chapters of the book Dawn of a New Era. As always, it's a collaborative work, and I say this because not only my mentor, but all of the mentors of the SSB and everyone else who comes and help understand these topics and perhaps share with you what's important, because there's a lot of information that we could be sharing, but it would be more than 1 hour for the two chapters. I mean, we can extend one chapter perhaps for several hours, but the support that we receive to understand some of these things that are being brought by the author, as well as the collaborators of the work from the beyond, to teach us and guide us on living a better life here on planet Earth. Like I was saying, it is a continuation. This book is a continuation of the book Planetary Transition, also by Manuel de Miranda, through the hands of the medium Divaldo Franco. So, I urge you, I ask you, I implore you to please, please, please read the books as well. Before we read this one, try to read Planetary Transition. It's very intense. However, it brings us a lot of teachings that we can utilize in our day-to-day lives. In this one here, the same way. There are several lessons that we can learn from it and apply in our lives to live a better life. And chapter 8, I'm sorry, this session 8, covering chapters 14 and 15, couldn't be any different, right? And that's what we would like to propose at the beginning, before we even start today, to say the things that we'll be applying here, that we'll be discussing here, need to be applied in our lives, needs to be exemplified, right, by us. It for sure, it would not be something that we will be able to do overnight, but it takes a lot of effort. And with time, we will hopefully be able to implement in our lives, and then make also a mark, a good mark on the lives of others, because they will see the examples, right? Sometimes it can be said it, or sometimes it just has to be done by example, and hope others will follow it. So there's a lot that we would like to cover today with these two chapters. Before we go in, one more announcement that I would like to make is that as we are covering information, ideas about a specific religion, a specific group of people, we would like to ask you to. Um, we would like to ask you to make sure that we don't get caught up on the a specific aspect of the religion, of what we're bringing, or to create any animosity towards a religion or towards a group of people. This is to illustrate what's happening or what has happened in the past in our lives, and understand that perhaps you and I, should not be doing the same thing, or should not fall into the same temptations, right? So that is the idea, and we want to put it aside any idea that the author or Spiritism is criticizing, in a way, saying that this or that is wrong, or banishing all over. I mean, there are a lot of things that the Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, Bezerra de Menezes points out that, look, this is wrong. This is, where we shouldn't be. But they also, it's important to point out that they also say a lot about the old Christians, or perhaps us, you and I, who could be, have incarnated in those days when the wrongdoings of those moments happen, right? So again, just things that I always like to bring to you. So we go into these chapters with a clean heart, with preconceived, or instead of preconceived ideas that may, let's say, create a negative cloud around you towards the message, and how you take the message and you also process towards one another. So let us go ahead and dive into the teachings, right? We have covered thus far up to chapter 13, and we have pretty much 5 more chapters. This will be the close to the last session. We have really one more session that we will try to cover all chapters 16, 17, and 18. But before we get there, let us cover today Priceless, Indispensable Lessons and an Opportune Intervention. Two beautiful chapters, a lot of information, and we would like to say that chapter 14 is more like a, if we will, Bezerra de Menezes comes and gives an idea on what's going on planet Earth right now, in certain parts of the world, in certain conditions, and how we need to work it out, right? And then on chapter 15, it is another rescue that happens in the Spiritist Center. Let's say not just one Spiritist Center. Now they start working on with other Spiritist centers that have been also attacked by the followers of the Rabbi Ben Sadak. As you go back to other chapters that we covered, you will get to know a little bit more about it. The chapters 11, session 6 and 7, chapter 10, 11, 12, and 13, it's actually truly dives into the assistance that was provided to Ben Sadak and all of the followers of the rabbi. But let's go ahead and chat and chat a little bit about chapter 14, Priceless, Indispensable Lessons. Manuel P. de Miranda says, the following day, during a break in the activities at the Spiritist Center that continued to serve as the basis for our own activities, Dr. Bezerra called a meeting in the music room, which had been reserved for that purpose. I'll stop it here, and I think it's important for us to receive this guidance in terms of they do their work, they do what they're supposed to do, but in between they stop, they digest what happened, they make plans, they give an update on what are to happen, so they can prepare themselves better. I think this is prudent for us to analyze, because every day of our lives, we get up in the morning, or most of the days of our lives, we get up in the morning, and we're always get caught up on the things that are happening, and we never stop, and we never create a moment to digest the things that are happening. And when I say digest it in different ways, right? To perhaps acknowledge what you're going through, perhaps acknowledge your environment, and we don't do that often at all. And to receive this from to receive this teaching from higher spirit, we have to take that in consideration, because if they're more evolved than us and they're doing this, why we're not doing it? Why we're not following this, right? And it was done in the Munistic room, which is a room of the Spiritist Center that is well regarded, that is well maintained, well prepared for every meeting, Munistic meeting that they have. So it's important for us to stop and think: what is the best room of my home? What is the best location that I can go ahead and stop and make an analysis of what's happening in my life, right? And what is to come, right? So in any case, just a food for thought that there. And Bezerra de Menezes says, in preparing for our excursion to attend to the urgent needs of the Spiritist movement, especially at this center, we have avoided detailing the particular situation so that you would be less concerned. Nonetheless, ever since the first moments of endeavor, we have known that the east of evil had spread to various other spiritist centers in Brazil, as well as in other countries that have received the blessings of the Comforter. When we read this, we were struck, because it's like, well, this is uh, a work that is being done in a spiritist center in Brazil. The author, quote unquote, is Brazilian. Bezerra de Menezes is known to act in many areas of Brazil, in many spiritist center there. But look how the work is being done, and I would like to emphasize on both works, right? The work of the good, the work of also the evil work that is being done. They were actually connected with several spiritist center who will bring this new ideal to Earth. And we don't want to just create the boundaries of, oh my God, this applies to Brazil, this applies to Spain or Australia or whatever. No, these are all spiritist centers in Brazil, as well as other countries that are emanating this light, this new beginning of our society, right? In terms of making become a better individual, and collectively a society, a better society. So there you go. For those who think that perhaps we're just bringing stuff from Brazil, or bringing information from this or that literature that is first brought in the Portuguese language, the work is being done all over the world, right? In both realms of life, not only the incarnated one, but the discarnated one as well. Of course, other groups are also receiving competent assistance according to the superior plan that has called us to this special task entrusted to us under the auspices of heaven. So the help is there. Concurrently, considering the moral and physical transition taking place on the planet, frenzy hordes of spirits that banded together in infernal caves are now assailing the activities of the new era, and are trying to spread the deadly pestilences of doubt, schemes, and destructive intrigues. And they are having a severe damaging effect, as I have already mentioned. We cannot ignore the moral, spiritual situation reflecting today's politics and in the economy prevailing in the world, which is going through a very critical moment, as powerful civilizations are collapsing under the blows of the law of progress, while others seem to be emerging to replace them. Even if, for some, slave labor and disrespect for citizenship and people's freedom are the predominant agenda. Because of the interest that runs nations in general, other nations try to ignore the heinous of these authoritarian regimes so as to reap profits and form partnerships with their powerful economies, born in cruelty to people who suffer from their destructive demands. So we're going to see here a shift on the different aspects. Again, I can't bring all the information that are or connected one point to the other, but I'll try to help you in that sense. That again, Bezerra de Menezes is coming and bringing us um, the state of our planet Earth right now, what's happening, right? And we're going to go into details in some of the areas, but there you go. He is actually covering part of our politics, part of our our on how our, politicians are working, how the economy is actually driving us to certain abysses, and we really have to make sure that we're questioning what is in front of us, right, in all shape or form in conditions that we're living right now, because it is critical that in order for us to move to a better situation, or in order for us to improve anything in our lives, we have to make sure that we are acknowledging what's happening, right? We cannot be blinded anymore, but also, that shouldn't create any kind of animosity on us, that we are indignated to a point that we don't even think right, and to act right, but we are balanced it out, right? If we're in this situation, it's because we have done something in the past, and we're still doing something right now that is actually bringing us to this position, or perhaps we are being delivered by ourselves a specific product. So I hope you get the message in terms of we're pointing out things, but it's not for us to criticize to the point that we're not acting, or when we are acting, we're doing more damage than good. But for sure, one thing is we shouldn't be blinded anymore, and we shouldn't just say, "Oh, this is not for me." Yes, we're going to act on how much we can act, but that doesn't mean we should not do something to not change the environment. So he considers that in the days of the recent past, Islam begun to be seen as the fastest growing religious doctrine on the planet. Instead of encountering the disgust of civilization, example of terrorism and impiety by some of its members, received support from insane incarnate minds and sophisticated psychopaths, who were not able to make a name for themselves otherwise, taking refuge in the dens of hatred and participating in their nefarious criminal plans aimed at the death and destruction of the Western and Eastern culture, as well as their respective nations, provided these plans were against the interests of other ethnic groups or factions of the same religious doctrine. With a few exceptions, its loyalties have not in vain against this bleak situation, which is not supported by the Quran, there no holy book, but have actually encountered disorder, aiming to dominate the world with their proposals for violence on the one hand, and submission on their morbid whims on the other. So, as we mentioned before, now Bezerra de Menezes is talking about a specific religion that we see that is taking matters, on their own hand and creating more issues on earth than we would like to see, right? It's important that we go back to history, folks. This is a little disclaimer, parenthesis that I would like to bring here. It's important that we go back to history and we see what has happened between the three Abrahamic religions: Islam, obviously, Christianity, and our Jewish brothers and sisters, right? Judaism. So these three Abrahamic religions, we have been, fighting or living together, and then fighting as well for quite some time, right? We have seen difficulties that all three religions have created for themselves as well as amongst ourselves, right? And when I say ourselves, because we were there, perhaps in different under different denomination. As much as we like to say, "Oh no, I only reincarnated," if we accept the idea of reincarnation, which is something that we're going to talk about a later on here, we perhaps were in have reincarnated in families that perhaps were not Christian. We have reincarnated perhaps in families that were Jewish families, perhaps in the Islam world as well, Islamic world, in terms of nations that perhaps follow these religion. It's possible. Yes, everything indicates that if we're, now in this position, perhaps, yeah, we have had more reincarnation in the Christian, let's say, in the Christian home more than others, but it's a possibility. I'm just exploring this because this, number one, brings us a little bit more together, and number two, it helps us understand that through reincarnation, as we're going to see later, things will change, right? But the idea here is to point out that it is being seen, it is a fact that is in fact growing because of immigration, as we're going to see, but there is a catch to it, right? There is a catch to it. And he says the following: accurate statistics based on the laws of genetics have established that for the culture and the civilization of an era to survive over time, basic level of human reproduction are required to assist with economic and social development. However, this is not happening in Europe and North America. The risk of the breakdown of civilization has been offset by a massive Muslim immigration, which with each decade is reaching amazing population levels in host countries. It is also natural that the numbers of Islam followers will increase and that fanaticism will grow because these immigrants are rarely idealistic but economically needy laborers. They hang on to the roots of their origin and do not assimilate the knowledge or the language of the nations in which they have settled, preserving their habits and keeping their offspring limited by the walls of enslaving ignorance. It would seem inevitable what within a few dozen years these nations may become Muslim, which um, would not be regrettable, except that rejecting Jesus would be dangerous to human freedoms and a big setback in the planet's evolution, thus hindering its renewal to a world of regeneration. So let us kind of like again help one another digest this, because I also had, when I read it the first time, I was like, that's an interesting analysis by Bezerra de Menezes here. But we have to be careful here that we don't go into a position where, oh, he's saying this because he doesn't like Islam. I want to stop and travel back here to planetary transition. If you may remember, the group of workers that were actually put together by the doctor that was actually helping in the Indian Ocean, the catastrophe that happened there in the Indian Ocean. If you remember, and I can point out, I am so sorry, I should have brought it right now, but I can point out the chapters that we covered this, but it's right at the beginning. The group of rescuers that in the spiritual plane had the collective work of a Muslim, a Jew, a Christian, a couple Christians actually, and they came together to aid all those individuals that were there. So my point here is, number one, there's a collective work that can be done with all the individuals actually that work under the light of different religions, right? And the one thing is interesting here, that they understand Spiritism. However, they continue to follow the teachings that were brought by those individuals who came and brought life. Muhammad, others that came and say, you know what, this is a good way of life. And they are, and it is. As we have seen here, he also says that there are these fanatical ideals, right, is not supported by their holy book, by the Quran. And we want to just, kind of bring this, remind everyone of the work, because the collective work can be done with these individuals, except that, they are in a much better position than the ones that he's actually mentioning here. We're going to make another connection with this later on. But what he's analyzing is the fact that there is a huge immigration of Islam throughout the world right now, especially to Europe, now that is happening here to North America as well. And then you see that the embracing of the culture is rarely there, right? When it happens, it's very minimal, right? Because again, as he's mentioning, there is an economic aspect behind as well. And it's interesting because it makes us think, right? It is not just the immigration of individuals from one country to the other, but what kind of effect would that have over time in our society, right? And the fear that one may have is that, okay, now so everybody will become a Muslim. No, there's none of that. I mean, we have received the teachings that we believe that is best for us, and we can make those choices. There are certain teachings that I have learned from Islam, from other religions in general, that I think it's very interesting. That is an amazing point of view, that it is very liberating. Joanna de Angela makes up several mentioning of other religions as well, other leaders as Gandhi. We see a lot in Spiritism, and we learn from them. They were actually closer to Christ or the Christian teachings than in many ways that we think, or certain things that we follow, right? So I think it's important here. But going back to the point, is that we may think that, okay, this is a huge problem, and it is, because the rejection of the Christian ideas, and we're not exalting Christ, the person, the individual, but his teachings, right? It can be very damaging. But progress is a law. It's not something that we can actually put it aside. We can actually reject for the time being, but time will come that we have to change, right? And it's not that Christianity or the Christian ideals will be forced into someone, but they will actually be expanded within those teachings, within those religions as well. Whether they say they're Christian or not, it's going to happen. And he said, since no one, no force can stand an impediment to the divine plan, free spirits have been reincarnated in those countries and employing resources of virtual communication that facilitate contact with the West and the rest of the world, even under the dagger of the harsh laws that threaten those to contravene them. Consequently, these networks of social communication via the internet have become an instrument for relationships and for warnings against the ills that those lands are undergoing at the hands of the insane dictators, giving rise to the rebellion against suffering and the emergence of the so-called Arab Spring. A number of thrones have fallen, and those who used to sit on them become victims of the same cruelty they used against their real or imagined enemies, losing their heinous lives in the same way. I'm just gonna say a couple words, and then we're gonna move on so we can, put it all this together and move on to the next topic. Here's the thing: these people, they're creating their own, let's say, uh, um, conditions, right? Based on how they're approaching the public, based on how they're treating their people, right? And we learned this with who? With Christianity, right? It's you ought to receive what you're applying towards others, right? Or do unto others what you want to receive, right? So if I'm applying a harsh law towards my people, if I'm a leader, or perhaps if I am an individual who is responsible for a group of people, guess what? This is how, the same will be applied to me when they have to judge me, because we're not perfect, right? We think we are. They may think they are, but we're not. So the same will apply to us. Moving on. Dangerous, powerful men fled and hid in holes dug in the earth to hide their cowardice, only to be found like persecuted animals and then harshly imprisoned or killed with the same fury that these revolutionaries have been victims of. And the Arab and the Spring continues, changing the geopolitics in which the West has gotten involved in its eagerness to profit from the mineral wealth of those dead desert soils. The serious problems that has not yet been considered involves the revolutionaries who topple tyrants by using the very same methods that they condemned these offenders for because of their crimes against humanity. However, if they were to develop a taste and lust for power, which should pass through their hands, and begin to coerce those who yearn for freedom, gradually taking it from them, they would remain in control and postpone forever the fulfillment of the promises they made before the struggle. At the same time, these countries are composed of various ethnic groups that often have a culture and religious formation that differs from the primitive foundations of the Quran, giving way to various interpretations. This has created factions that hate each other, raising the risk of new internecine battles with incalculable damage to ideals, which for a time fluttered on banners hoisted in the fierce combats. Several elements here. I wanted to read the whole thing so we get the picture, so we understand. Is that number one? These groups within themselves, they have their own destructive powers. What I'm trying to say is that based on the first ideals proposed by the individual who wants to become a leader or who becomes a leader, guess what? There will be those that will say, no more. Perhaps I was blinded and I thought this was a great idea, but when they start attacking them directly, when it gets to be applied to to some of them, they rebel back. And there will be a coalition of individuals within those ideals that's going to say, no, no more. As Bezerra de Menezes is showing to us that there's also a connection with other parts of the world who is saying, okay, well, we can do better than this. You don't have to live under this oppression, under this ideal that you have to obey everything that is being said to you. Not that we're not going to have order, not that we're not gonna have respect, but it's important for us to show that obviously my rights, number one, has a limit, right? And it will have a limit when I start infringing the rights of others, right? The same way others towards me. And this is how we create a line of respect between ourselves, which unfortunately it does not happen in these groups of people. The other point that I would like to bring as well, that Bezerra de Menezes is analyzing this, is that perhaps those who are now fighting for a better life, what if they have power? What if they are placed in the position of becoming a leader or becoming someone responsible for a group of people? Will they do the same way? Will they retaliate in such a manner that it will also create chaos? Right? These are the things that we have to analyze here, and this once more, along with the differing interpretation of their holy book, as much as we also do misinterpretations of the Bible, the Old and the New Testament, as we have seen in the past and we still see nowadays. These individuals will clash with one another, right? Until it gets to a point that is saying, no, what are we doing to ourselves? What are we doing to the legacy that was left by the man who came and sacrificed himself to actually bring us a better way of life, right? So these are the points that I would like to bring to you here as we read these things together, as we analyze these points. It's not for us to judge, but to really say, what am I doing? What are we doing with Spiritism now that we're studying Spiritism, right? How am I applying this to myself, towards others, towards society in general? How is it making my life better, right? So these are the points that I would like to bring, because if he's bringing these warnings to us, it's, rest assured, is for us to live a better life, to consider things a little bit different than how we considered in the past. Continuing, all the murders of humanity were, and some still are protected by the dominant religion, just as occurred in the West in the past, when religion determined who should rule, live, own property, die, go into exile, or be thrown into prison, before the French Revolution confronted the ruthless tradition and put an end to it. The same is now occurring in the region hit by the wave of the search for freedom and justice. As a result, there is ignorance for separation between the state and religion, reducing or making the unhappy and supreme power of the Iolatas or clergy hungry for revenge disappear. So we see, look, he's bringing Christianity back to us. He's bringing the past right back into our faces and saying it has happened before. We need to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to protect ourselves. But within these groups, there is an antidote, which is unfortunately their own behaviors, their their ways to see the world. And this, quite frankly, reminds me of the saying when Jesus actually brings to us, and I truly forget now what part of the Bible is, let the dead bury the dead, right? Because if they're having this conflicts between themselves, they are doing themselves their a disfavor, because there is no really caring for one another, but to destroy based on their hidden agendas, and sometimes they're very explicit agendas, right? Consequently, the possibility for the expansion of the Muslim faith to dominate Europe and a new America in the near future is retreating, if not disappearing, while the gentleness, compassion, mercy, love, and charity of the divine Messiah will spread under other conditions to those exhausted nations, where his doctrine foundered, the victim of um, unscrupulous, ambitions, priests, and pastors as well. Most of humankind wars have, in some way or another, always been caused by religion, which has rendered it loathsome. It is Spiritist's mission to change the concept through its fundamental base on the certainty of immortality and divine justice through reincarnation, making all aware of the fact that one always receives to the extent that one has given, as we have said earlier, right? Whatever I'm doing right now, or whichever way I'm acting right now, I'm setting an example. I'm setting a standard that perhaps the same standard will be applied to us. It's just a simple consequence that we will reap what we are actually sowing. And it's something that we cannot hide or run from it. These are just laws of cause and effect in a way that we have to really analyze. But it's interesting here that he brings this idea of the wars, right? Everything has a base, or has had a base or a strong base in religion. And we brought this question from the Spirit's book, which is in the law of destruction, third part of the Spirit's book, that questions what is the cause that leads humankind to war. And we have seen this before. The answer is really interesting because it is the predominance of the animal nature over the spiritual, and the satisfaction of their passions. In this state of barbarity, nations only know the right of the strongest, and that is why war is a normal state for them. As humans evolve, war will become less frequent since they will avoid its causes. And when it does become necessary, they will know how to make it more humane. We can extend this topic right here, or just this answer, to several hours. I love to read this because it amazes me every time. Number one, the predominance of animal nature over the spiritual. We think that this is more a physical trait than anything else, but we are the animal nature, right, is can be seen here in different ways. Is it reason? Is it spirituality? Is what it is, right? Well, animals, they are moving. They're on planet Earth right now. I'm talking about animals. Even if you look at your pet, right? What is it? Instinct. They're based on their instinct. I mean, they will do things. They will. If it's raining outside and is a pet, since we're bringing a pet, they kind of like are kind of reluctant to go outside because they know they're gonna get wet. They have this in understanding that I don't want to go in the rain. However, if you see a wild animal, they're in the rain and they don't care, right? So their instincts their processing instincts are a little bit different. The same way with us, we still are connected by instincts. We do have the ability to choose, right, free will, but we're still connected with that animalistic ideals of the past. So when we read the Bible, when we read the Spirit's book, how are we interpreting things on these books, right? Even if we were to read the Quran, our brothers and sisters from these nations that were mentioned here in the Muslim world, how are they reading the Quran? They're reading with their passions, with their animalistic passions, their animal predominance. So when they process something in those books, it's going to be to create war, to create to distance, this group from that group, to create issues. And now, dare to say it also, we don't know. Some of us may not know. Some of us do know, since we're studying spiritism. What happens? We connect with the spiritual world. That intensifies everything, right? So this idea of predominance of the animal, it's not just in the physical realm that we look more animal, than we're more spiritualized, the beautiful and angelic faces and all. No, let's take step, different. Let's take step by step and understand what the spiritual are trying to tell us here. And we once more look at how the evolving of wars will happen, right? If we have to defend ourselves, what? Well, let me take a step back. If the spirits are saying that as human evolve, war will become less frequent, we know that because we're going to choose, what? If I'm going to hurt my brother and sister, that is not a good outcome. We don't want that. We want to come together. We want to converge things. We want to make sure that we are embracing one another, helping one another, not destroying one another, even though this is actually analyzed under the law of destruction. And when it does become necessary, they will know how to make it more humane. This is just okay. So I'll leave it up to you to think of how a war can become humane. Are wars just now in our uh, planet right now just by the use of ballot system or elements? No, there are different types of war. Economic wars, there are social wars, and different ways for us. In fact, we also have to add into this the religious wars that we just are mentioning here, right? This religion, or how I see, how I behave, and how we conduct ourselves towards one another. In general, guys, what we're trying to say is that it will be humane in the sense that we will change, right? And there are reasons as well that we need to in fact create war, or the warlike behaviors, for us to protect ourselves, because it's quite important for us to say here that there are groups of people that are connected with spirits that unfortunately do not want to create happiness. They quite the opposite. They want to create, they want to harm us. They want to harm one another, right? They are vibrating way more than we are in the animal nature. Their predominance are very animalistic. It is if we are hurting an animal and they bite us back, or a dog and they bite us back, as if we're going to perhaps to the wild and doing something to a bear. Guess what? The bear will jump on you and will create some issues. And again, I don't want to create any disturbing images towards one another here, but it's just for us to illustrate where we are right now. I hope that you understand what is happening right here, but there is a counterbalance to all of this, right? Bezerra de Menezes says the following: poet, thinkers, artists from various fields of beauty, scientists from the past and present, and all will be returning to awaken the mind, assisting it with the evolution of fraternity amongst all peoples. One sole family composed of different races, bloods, and passions, in which all will enjoy the blessings of harmony. Similarly, truth cantors from bygone days are reincarnating in order to assist with the great impulse of liberating progress. Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, esotericists, adhering to religions, denominations, spiritualists or non-spiritualists in general, thinkers and scientists who are encouraged to consult the Bible or the sacred books that underpin their beliefs, they will all realize that reincarnation is the cleansing crucible for human impurities and the facilitators of the spirit's unending progress. And we like to include here all these religions that are encouraging one another, or the religious ideals that are encouraging the well-being of the planet. And he also includes right here, I put the picture so we can all see that the the spirits who are also coming from Alcyon, as we have seen in planetary transition and in some of these chapters as well. They're here to help us as well, creating um, better ideals for all of us. So the help is there, even though we are seeing all these difficulties happening right now. Guess what? Help is there, and we are being guided by higher minds. The point is, what I am doing to get there and to connect with these minds more effectively. Let's move on because we spent a lot of time on this 14. The chapters are long, as I said, but let me go ahead and bring chapter 14 because one, in a way, complements the other as well. So hang in there. The work at the Spiritist Center. So what happens on chapter 14, chapter 15? As I said to you earlier, there was another rescue that happened in the Spiritist Center. The same night, workers from both planes met just as we had in previous days. We were waiting for workers from other Spiritist centers hit by the fury of Rabbi Sadok's followers to bring some of the most prominent combatants to our mediumistic meeting. So he didn't work by himself. He was not alone. He had a group of people, a group of spirits working with him, inducing other incarnated beings, discarnated and incarnated beings to work with them, right? Creating hatred, and we're going to see a little bit of that. That also needed help. It's not just that individual, but other individuals as well that were spirits that were working with Ben Sadok. Within 5 minutes, within minutes, five spiteful, coarse, half-awake spirits were brought in, along with a group of others who bore lascivious impressions, fighting against the vibrational bands that enveloped them and led them to our room. After Emmanuel opened the meeting, the mediums Celestina and Marco went into a deep trance, attracting for fraternal dialogue two of the guests who woke up connected to the mediums expending their spirits, simultaneously initiating a tortured and aggressive psychophony. Marcelo and Dr. Bezerra took actions immediately, the latter choosing Rabbi Melchizedek. This is, please just forgive me for mispronouncing that, but it's kind of a hard name, who was communicating through the transfigured Celestina. So what I will do here is to present to you what is happening in this mediumistic meeting, which is the conversation by Dr. Bezerra de Menezes and this other rabbi who was helping Rabbi Sadok's one of his followers. And I'm actually going to present the conversation in such a way that you see that the whatever is said by the rabbi is in red, and whatever is said by Bezerra de Menezes is actually on in the color green. Okay, the rabbi says the following: only through treason, because he's brought to the mediumistic meeting. For him, is he felt that he was being forced. He says the following: only through treason could the cowardly disciple of the Lamb have reached us, intentionally ignoring the fact that we too have rights before the laws in force in the universe. Dr. Bezemenez comes and says, of course, Dr. Bezemenez countered, the same rights given to those who have fallen into your evil traps. Rights you have given yourselves to hurt, torment, and erect obstacles to the work of the good, and to bring misfortune to others. You, my brother, call us a traitor. We who use the resources of prayer and mercy instead of your mechanism of harm, cruelty, and hatred, with which you poison the unwary and drag them down into your heinous prisons in pungent processes of obsession. And I'm going to go over this whole part over here because it's important how we see that the spirit is very upset about the fact that they're quote unquote being helped, but they don't see that way, and they cannot. It takes a lot from Bezerra de Menezes to convince or to help this individual for them to transition into a better state of mind. He continued by saying, we have the right to obey the authorities of our religion, react the exasperated communicator. If it were not our obligation to obey their orders, we would not have begun such a long and terrifying battle. You are right in saying you would serve a wretched spirit, but one who has just surrendered to the truth in submission to the meekness of Jesus. And he's referring to his quote unquote master, in this case, Mr. Rabbi Sadak. Oh, there was no surrender. It was an arbitrary imposition due to the detestable method used to hold him in your vile trap. And he goes on to say, well, what do you want from us? After all, we have nothing to do with this center. So the idea, remember, is to take these individuals, these spirits who are now connected not directly with the center where they're working, but with other spirit centers that we have said at the beginning, even to disconnect the obsessive connections that were established in other spiritist centers around the world. Bezerra Menezes says the following: of course, you have nothing against our center, but in your rage, you want to challenge Jesus' servants, setting traps for them, attacking them, and seducing them with your siren songs to drag them mercilessly under your domination. And he says, it's just that the promise of the crucified one who claimed to be our Messiah is false and heinous. And down through history, he has viewed bloody persecutions against Adonai's elect. But he was a false prophet who was judged according to what he deserved. So it is only natural that we have always risen up against him through his wretched heirs and disseminators of the big lie. We will not rest until we have changed the struggles of the true doctrine recorded in the Torah and the other holy books of our people. Just a quick analysis here. We talk about the Quran, and we talk about the teachings that on how we interpret as well the teachings of the First and the Second Testament, right? The New and the Old and the New Testaments in terms of Christianity. And here it is, a doctor of the law, saying that they're going to use the Torah to continue their nefarious work, right? So is that the book is bad, or is that how we interpreting things is a little bit off, or quite a bit off, right? Listening to you expose your ideas by using your sophist argumentation, one might think that you are right. Jesus is God's Messiah, not only for Israel, but for all humankind. No one has ever lived the truth as fully as he did, not even any prophet who came before or after him. For all those who came to proclaim him were short of his greatness. It was he who rose to meet the lower classes despised by the other social classes, this deceitful prejudice cultivated by tradition and preserved in the synagogues. His ability to love and forgive has never been matched by anyone. And then right here, I'm just going to go ahead again and kind of finalize what Bezerra Menezes has brought. But this is all Bezerra Menezes explaining to the spirit about what has happened. Where did we lose ourselves? Where did we get in the situation where we are right now, to perhaps having to work even in the spirit realm? I'm sorry, not only in the physical realm, but also in the spirit realm, to liberate ourselves from from the battles that we created, right? And this is to encompass every civilization. This is to encompass also the different religions, and most importantly, as we have said, how do we apply this to our lives, in our lives? The persecutions you mentioned were not by Jesus, but by the exploiters who took his teachings and turned them into temporal strength and power, much different that his, which he made very clear regarding commitments to God and commitments to Mammon. Giving into the world's tempting allures, such exploiters abandoned him and despised him. We cannot judge and condemn the Jewish people for a crime that was perpetrated by the Sanhedrin and the Roman rulers, just as we cannot accuse all individuals of insanity because of their cruelty in the Asian wars against the Philistines and other vanquished peoples, or their slaughter of the worshippers of Baal and other gods. A religion that does not promote, and I'll highlight this, folks, a religion that does not promote mercy or compassion, a people that does not respect the rights of other peoples, neither of these merits consideration. Their actions are appalling, but a chance miss a chance must be given, excuse me, to their descendants who are not responsible for their heinous of their ancestors. Similarly, one cannot blame the master for of compassion for crimes committed by those who have betrayed him over time, inflicting persecution and harm on all who displease them. You, my brother, and we ought to take this lightly because Bezerra de Menezes knew who he was talking to. That's why he was using these words. You, my brother, can see that on the pathway of Spiritism, the new disciples of Jesus are striving to establish the purity and loftiness of the principles he proposed in love, charity, and caring for one's neighbor, especially concerning those who are misfortune or experience the torments of any king. In addition of in addition to being unfaithful to the truth, you, my brother, are insolent and presumptuous, because no one can be happy while persecuting and exploiting others and striving to cause their misfortune. We must warn you that all the evil you do will revert back to you. Let us consult Genesis 15, verses 15 and 16. It says, as for you, you will go to your fathers in peace and be buried at a happy old age. And it is in the fourth generation that they will return here, because until then, the sin, meaning the crime committed of the Amorites, will not have been paid. So these things will come back to us. It will revert back to us. How we created the issues of the past be reverted to back to us now. And you may ask, but Leo, so we're going to live in constant battles? No, until we stop and say, I don't want this anymore for myself. I don't want this anymore for my brothers and sisters, regardless of their religion or their beliefs. What we need to do is to find a common ground where we common ground, excuse me, based on respect, that we can allow others to live well without infringing our rights as well. And this is quite hard, right? It's beautiful on paper, beautiful in the discussion, but it takes time. And no wonder we are receiving the helps of these different minds that he has mentioned to us here. But he says that means that as long one's sin has not been redeemed, one cannot return to God, to Adonai. So, folks, it's a way for us to. It's a lot of information for us to really think about it and say, what am I doing? Where am I in this whole thing? Now that we may even think, okay, I'm not following directly this or that religion because I'm a spiritist, and I follow the Christian ideals in a different way. Or you can may say, okay, I'm a Christian. I am, you know, a direct follower of Jesus. Beautiful, and we ought to be, and this is what we're striving for, and also receive from the other teachings that comes from other religions as well, to make our lives better and change our lives and change the environment, right? With respect and guidance, with this idea in mind that perhaps we have to redeem or rescue all the sins or the wrongdoings that we have created in the past through reincarnation to make our lives better, right? This is a question for all of us. Even though Bezerra de Menezes is bringing this question to the rabbi, I'll read it to you, but I would like to ask you, please, 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 apply this in your life, especially when you go back to sleep tonight. Look, when you discarnated, when your flesh died and your physical life ceased in the tomb, where did you go? What have and welcomed you? In spite of you having regarded yourself as the good shepherd that you should have been for your people, instead, inclement hatred devoured you and left you with no trace of spiritual knowledge. It pushed you into the abyss where you find yourself today, even after several centuries have passed. What kind, what kind of doctrine is that? It cannot even help its faithful at the most critical time of their existence as immortal beings. So, once more, is it a problem with the message that this individual received, or is it a problem with how he interpreted, he created this heaven that would be a product of of what he did in the past or what he is still doing now, right? Remember, he's discarnated. He's well aware of what's going on because they are working in the spiritist centers. So if they're working the spiritist centers, they're connected with people that are in the spiritist centers. They're listening to talks. They're listening to what we're reading. They're listening to what we're connecting with, which is what? Reincarnation. So if we understand reincarnation, they will also understand reincarnation. If they are connected with the message, they know how the mechanism works, but they are so blinded they cannot see it. And the level of resignation to this reality is not there yet, right? It's like seeing reality right in front of you, but you don't want to accept it, right? It's like saying, okay, there is the internet signal here, for my computer right now. I don't see it, thus I don't believe it. Well, I'm talking to you right now, and I have no interruption whatsoever on that, right? So it's there. Just because I don't see it, it's there. So I think it's important for us to look at this, and obviously we're not in the deplorable situation as the rabbi, but to really think, okay, is the teachings that I am applying, or the teachings that I'm reading or connecting with, number one, being interpreted in a positive, in a humane way? Number two, what will they do for me in the future, right? And I say this while we're still living in the physical body, as well as um, after we lose the physical body. Just food for thought. There and what happens next, and I would like to forewarn you, because it's a in a I shouldn't say forewarn you, but to alert you. It's a beautiful thing. It's really interesting, because after he goes into this rescue of the rabbi, after the rescue of the rabbi, something really interesting happened. It's more like a contemplation of the opportunity to serve, that these things happen, I believe, because, and I think it's important for us to acknowledge this in our lives as well. And I'll give you an example. But when we're doing the right things, when we're helping one another, we get to be visited by higher minds, much like sometimes out of no aberrant reason whatsoever, we just feel good, right? We get goosebumps, and it's like, good vibration, and that feeling that sometimes, we kind of brush it off and say, I don't know why that happened, that was weird, but it happens to all of us. We get to be visited by higher minds. In this case, let us read and see what happens here. Dr. Bizarre prayed for divine protection for the work to be done that morning. When he finalized, dozens of tall in stature, high order spirits descended to the stairs and glided towards the arena, encircling it and radiating a fascinating, magnificent light. Suddenly, a tube of light was projected from on high, and within it condensed the saint of Assisi, accompanied by a few of his closest disciples, calling to mind the glorious days of the past. Sometimes I'm actually moving my head like this out of focus here, just because I can read, because the camera is right on front of my slides there, folks. So I apologize for that. But yes, no other than Saint Francis of Assisi comes and actually connects with them. And he says a couple things. I'm just going to go and read this, and let this be also a prayer for us. I didn't bring the whole thing. It would be nice that you go and read it. But I brought some, about 8 or so paragraphs, so we can see how the proposals, what is to happen, and how we can help as well. With an expression illuminated by his profound inner peace, St. Francis approached the podium, which received a jet of light, much like what occurs in theaters to highlight certain scenes or persons. St. Francis was glorified with blessedness in an attitude of unparalleled humility, stating, brothers and sisters from the ends of earth, and great souls from Alcyone, may the impeccable peace of the Lord Jesus be with us all. We are experiencing the great moment of a battle without quarter. It is a battle in which the armies of the Lord and Master will be armed with the instruments of love and mercy to restore the kingdom of meekness and love for everything and everyone on earth. Preserving the good in the secret chamber of people's heart has been a major existential challenge especially with the appearance of the first rays of light signifying hope for peace and true progress for humankind. In spite of their indisputable contribution to the evolutionary process, the incomparable achievements of scientific knowledge have not really met the innermost needs of the human being who seeks peace. Peace is the sole result of love in its various expressions, from those involving one's own enlightenment to those involving love towards others. This means resignation, selflessness, devotion, and above all, charity in action. I'd like to make a parenthesis here that we all know and we all see that ourselves in one way or the other in this process, in this evolutionary process, right? Where we have so much technology, we have so much around us in terms of physical things, in terms of people, but sometimes we feel so empty and we're still looking for, the essence inside of us, right? And we ask, what is it? And he comes to, explaining what this peace is, right? This expression of love is, right? For the resignation of ourselves on how we perceive life, as well as on how we actually apply that onto others, helping one another. And he says resignation, selflessness, devotion, and above all, charity in action. Beautiful part of it. And he continues by saying there is a thirst for harmony within the individual, despite the fact that some are surrounded by all kinds of excesses, thus experiences a loss of spiritual meaning and therefore the peace that only Jesus can provide. Personal contribution in the form of dedication to one's duty and the reincarnation of destructive selfishness is a must, because the latter has been the ruin of all of who evolve heedless on this imminent danger, while the opportunity to serve shines. May this assisting endeavor not be postponed, for it will always be beneficial for the one who offers it. Every and any expression of love, every and any expression of love offered to incarnate brothers and sisters become a drop of light on our shadowy path, which will be marked by our footprints as we make our way towards the great focal point, the ever waiting master of the destituted and unfortunate. Let us not rebel against our trials. A life without sacrifice and self denial is a journey without inner gratitude, directed instead to the land of fantasy, which reality shows to be meaningless. It takes extreme temperatures for metals to be molded into new forms, as it takes polishing for our rough gems to be transformed into stars. Likewise, the spirit perfects itself through struggle, beautifying itself and developing the divine light within. To finalize, like the rest of us, you have been invited to work in his vineyard during these difficult times because you are equipped for the good fight, assisted as you are by your belief in immortality. And then he goes on to once more address those spirits who are from Alcyone, the more evolved spirits that are here helping us. Some already reincarnated, and some already to ready to reincarnate to bring us progress in all arenas of life. But the points that we would like to emphasize here, folks, is that we are going through some struggles. We are being invited to help. We are equipped to help as well. It all depends on how we are applying these equipment, right? We see that he uses the idea of a battle, but it's a different battle, right? It's more humane because now the battle is what? What are our if we can redefine weapons, right? Love, compassion, right? Determination, right? When we have to be determined that the good must go on, right? It's not just what the public or the greater is saying, but we need to change. We need to be persistent and say, no, this is not good. It may be good for a group of people, but we'll see that later on this can be very destructive as well. And this is, I believe, the idea here is to be selective in the ideals that Christ has brought us, selective in the ideals that the other great minds have brought us, right? The different I forget the word now that I'm trying to use. Um, uh, God sent spirits that came to Earth, on how we analyze and say, you know what, this is good. This is perhaps the old way that I don't want to apply to myself anymore, to ourselves anymore, in terms of war, in terms of how we interpret things. So I know it's quite a bit, and we already 10 minutes over our time, but we would like to bring this to you and to make sure that we read these pages with our hearts full of joy, and that we are analyzing things with a different perspective. Spiritism is not here to criticize or to banish any idea or religion, but the way is being interpreted. Much like if we see someone saying something against spiritism, against Islam that is not correct, we're going to say, look, just this is not what we are learning from it, and we need to revisit. Let's revisit together. Let me hear your point of view, hear my point of view. Perhaps we can get to a the where we need to be as a brother and brother, sister and sister, brother and sister, whatever, and as a society as well. We have covered a lot. This is an amazing book. We will try to finalize this book next month, session 9. If not, we may have to kind of tweak a little bit. That we will cover these three passages, three chapters, in 2 sessions. But we'll see how that goes. We will see how we can break it down in a better way, because we also have the intent to do a great summary of the book before the end of the year as well. It's been an amazing 8 sessions that we have covered a lot, and being here, but we'll see how that goes, because we want to make sure that we bring all the content for you, all the ideas that is important for our lives, and to also instigate you the best way possible for you to go and read the book as well. On that note, I would like to bring back Kirsten for us to go over some questions, some comments. I know it was a lot of information, so thank you so much for listening to all of this. And I'll stop sharing right now.
No, thank you so much. And there's so much to take in, to digest. Just more like, I think, at least for myself, I say, I'm wow, what a chapter. But let's go ahead and dive into some of the comments and questions. Of course, we have our usual people that are just saying hello to our from us from the internet, virtually, those who are watching us, and even some from across this United States, Oregon. Hello, hello. So let's dive into some of the questions. I'm actually going to start off by showing one of the comments. Looks like the Yasko just shared. I'm not sure if her comment got cut off, but it looks like she said, "Great topic, Leo. I heard in one of the Spiritist discussions that with successive incarnations, once a group of spirits that were, say, radical Christians against the Muslims, they may reincarnate in Muslim cultures to learn to love them, their religion, culture, etc. However, if they are still radical, low spirits, still fueled with hatred, now they will go against the Christians. This will go on until the hatred towards the different ones fades away and the universal love is learned and practiced."
I think she answered her question. I think I am quite sure that she answered her question. Yeah, it is true, Yasko. I mean, and this is why I'll give you the example of sometimes reincarnating in a family that sometimes we like. Let's say 80% of the family members, but there's one that we clash, right? And I think that can also be applied. The same idea can be applied towards us when we are reincarnating in a group, in a group of people in a society that we don't feel that we're able to embrace 100%. Yet we learn how to deal with it. We learn how to accept certain things. We may even leave that society or that group of people to explore and to feel more let's say 100%, if we can ever be 100% in other group with other groups of people. That's why sometimes immigration happens. That's why sometimes I believe that people move from one state to the other, because they can connect with similar minds. But the seed is actually planted there little by little, and it would be a fallacy for us to believe that just one reincarnation will do. No, it takes time. It takes actually a long consideration. This has happened also through the teachings that we receive of those who misinterpreted the Christian teachings, right? And I like to say that many of us spiritists will believe that we have done something in the past that went against the true teachings of Christ, and here we are now trying to rescue more than ever these teachings through the light of Spiritism, through the light of reincarnation, saying, "Here I am, living proof that that I am. I don't want to say we because you may not include yourself on that, but that I am actually someone who is trying to rescue of the misinterpretation or misbehaviors of the past." But you answer your question. It will take time. It may happen more than once until one party, one side of of the the street. I was gonna say aisle, but I was gonna be a little bit political there. I said it anyways. Says no more. I mean, we don't have to fight anymore. We can actually help one another instead of continue this fight of the past. So thank you for the question.
Absolutely. And then we have Paula. She comes to and brings us a question. She says, "How do you think the Hindu religion's belief in reincarnation resulted in the caste system? Misinterpreted through power and control rather than mercy and compassion?"
It's a good question, Paula, and I would refer you back to the book On the Way to the Light. There is this amazing book by the Spirit Emmanuel that explains, very detailed this idea of the caste. Um, and it's by the medium Chico Xavier. The There is a misinterpretation point there. There is also a political a power struggle, and it's so interesting. It's so deep that even those who are on the other side and lower caste, they also believe that they should not be granted the ability to move up in terms of caste, right? It's so ingrained on them that this idea is correct, that for us to believe that this is something that is just created in the now, um, it makes one question where that comes from. That's my point. And it comes from a different era, a different reincarnation. So I urge you to read and to go into it, because if we have to go in detail, it would be quite a bit. But the idea, yes, there is, to answer your question, there is elements of the present, but there are elements of the past as well. Now, it is also through reincarnations that we're seeing a change. I was blessed to be able to take a class for Eastern and Western religions, and one of the things that I actually noticed during those studies, that this idea of the caste are now coming to a transformation there. Much like Bezerra de Menezes was explaining here, that the connection with, through um, the different ways that we communicate with one another right now, especially the means of the internet, phones, computers, and everything, saying, look, I mean, yeah, there is a caste, there is a group of people that we have to respect, but I can also live a good life. I can also have the material means that is important for one who is reincarnated to have, to live a dignifying life or to become a better individual. And they're not better than us in every sense, and we can learn from one another, right? So there is my feeling is that, and I hope this answered my feeling, that is little by little changing as well, right? With all the different means of that we're receiving. I would like to finalize this comment by saying reincarnation. do you think that perhaps reincarnation, individuals from a higher class or higher group of people, in whatever we may consider that is higher, is not reincarnated in a lower caste, or vice versa, right? So we're taking internships in different castes for sure in our lives, right? Much like perhaps we reincarnate here this in this lifetime, reincarnate in another area in the next life. Many of us perhaps have been to places that this place is familiar. Well, guess what? There's a good indication that we perhaps reincarnated there. So just a point for us to think that reincarnation is actually bringing these castes together and diminishing little by little the differences there.
Yeah, excellent. And then we have a question from Yasko. She says, if even Jesus' teachings of love was not understood then and now as a result from prejudice and tolerance, no wonder humanity is still in low spiritual levels, making brotherly wars, causing segregation, hunger, poverty, and all sorts of miseries. How far are we of being a regenerated heart and seeing no religious, cultural, social, gender, skin color barriers? I guess how far away we are from that. Oh, Leo, I think you're on
Yes,
mute.
I was. Sorry. Wow, that's a good question, and I wish I could put a time into this, but we have free will, and I think this is a great thing, and this is a bad thing because sometimes we want to speed up things, right? And yes, I am one of them that I would love to see the dawn really shining upon us, right? In terms of respect, a more a balanced society. And I'm not only saying the U.S. because I think in the U.S. we have had a great society. We have established the means for development or to become better. I'll leave it at that because I know there are a lot of discrepancies and not everybody will agree with me. And obviously, I tend to compare to certain parts of the world. And when we do that, we truly see, I think it's important because we truly see that, in fact, yes, I mean, we do have um, a very well established in terms of means for us to progress. I digress. The idea is that there is no time. There is no way for me to say or for anybody to say that this is going to happen. We have the predictions that we sometimes get by the interpretations of certain spiritists, some scholars, in not only spiritism but also in different religions. But I think that we are seeing it. There is a lot of goodness that is happening, and we can see this with technology. Even though that is not well being applied, but we see this with the amounts of work that is being done for us to live, in a better world in terms of economics as well. Because when we look at the political and economic arena, it's like, oh my gosh, it's crazy. It's burning itself. No, there are a lot of good things as well. We have to really have ears to hear and eyes to see. And we see in different arenas as well. We're seeing this clash of a liberal world, but also making sure that we have a clash with the liberal world or liberal ideas, but also clashing with the or crashing with ideals that are more conservative to find a balance. We tend to see that these things are bad, and yes, in the heated moment, in the moments of conflict, yes, it is kind of tough, right? But what will come out of it, and if we respect one another, I think we'll be able to see this dawn much earlier than if we just continue to let things go and continue on the madness of the past. So your question to be answered, with few words, I do not have a time. But yes, you are correct. There is a lot to be changed.
Excellent. And I actually had a question that I posted it. I was wondering maybe you could discuss it too.
My question was, do you think perhaps the way in which we define war will change? Instead, it might be kinder and softer. As of right now, it tends to be something that always includes bloodshed and loss of many people. So I know in the text they talked about, in the future, when war is necessary, and then where at times it is, that it's going to look very differently. So I'm wondering if even the ways in which we define it are going to be different. I know because some people may have read that part of the text and thought, "Oh wow, we're still going to have wars." But maybe if you could expand on that, or what your ideas or understanding of that is.
Wow, it's hard for me to answer that question, Kirsten. In terms of redefining war altogether, right? Because when we say war, we see what, tanks, armaments and different things, bombs, and you name it, right? Um, I think that if I bring it to a personal level, and I'm gonna actually put you on the spot, I think it's better for us to understand. Let's bring this to our level here, you and I, and we're just bringing this to so everyone can understand. Some time ago, you mentioned to me that you had a perception of me that it was quite different than number one I was proposing or putting out there, right? But when you said that to me, you said it in such a nice way that I didn't take. I wasn't seeing that as an argument, or I didn't see that you were confronting me, but truly saying, I had this idea about you. I had this, and I had to think and say, wait a minute. She's not saying this in a bad way. She's trying to help me to become a better individual because perhaps I was actually impose onto others something that I was not, or perhaps something on the past that I had to change. My point here is that there was an argument. There was well, I don't want to say an argument. It was a a discussion, right? Not a heated, but something that can be seen as an argument, or perhaps something that can be seen as an attack. But it was different. It was for us to become better. So when we change our approach, number one, to how we say it and how we receive criticism as well, we can then take this idea and say, how are we going to see wars in the future, right? Let us take this idea now of changing on how we say and how we receive to a group of people who are representing nations, right?
Mhm.
The UN, for example, when they're talking about to become a more civilized world, right? If some a leader comes and say we need to stop this or we need to change this, and if that is well taken and well delivered and well received, guess what? The intent is there, and the changes will happen in different ways. We will probably retrieve our troops, and I'm talking about the troops that we know as we know it, and we're going to replace it with something else. We're going to change the different ballot systems that we have, and we're going to replace it with something else, and then war will become a different type of war, right? I also urge everyone to understand that, and this is something that is it can be argued that we have read in some literatures that are wars as well happening right now in the spirit realm. We go to the book
Mhm.
Action and Reaction. At the beginning of the book, there is a huge battle that happens, and as we have seen in this book as well, there is a huge battle as well between the good and the bad. And when I say the good and the bad, it's not that we're labeled that way, but well-intentioned spirit with not well-intentioned spirits. That they have to create they describe it as it is a war zone. So wars are happening, but what are the intentions of that war? What are the intention with those acts that are being done in those moments that happen at those moments? Because they're still happening. There are many areas of the globe that is happening in the spirit realm as well. My point is, it starts with us. It starts how we
Mhm.
see the world, right? Your criticism when you came to me and said, Leo, this is how I perceive it. And that did not go well with me, right? And I had to think, well, Kirsten is well intended. I don't think she's saying this to hurt me. She's saying this to help me and for us to live a better life, right? So I hope I didn't put you so drastically on the spot there, but I wanted to bring this reality that we went through, that I think the same can be applied in our lives, right? Because there is this whole thing about, oh, you're criticizing me, or, well, guess what? If we don't connect, if we don't talk about our difficulties and how we come short with one another, we're not going to change. How can we address something that is wrong if we don't ever acknowledge, if we don't ever give some thought to it? That's why we said at the beginning, and I'll rest my case with this, that Bezerra de Menezes at the beginning says, let's meet. Let's talk about what's
Mm.
happening right now, right? We don't do that. And that's why we have wars.
Excellent, Leo. Absolutely excellent. Wow, as you said earlier, we probably could go on and for hours and hours talking on this subject, but unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm not sure how you want to say it, we do have to come to an end. So, any final thoughts? And also, would you mind blessing us with the final prayer for this evening?
We'll do. Well, folks, the only thing we can ask, and I say this in the name of the Spiritist Society of Baltimore, is for us to take these teachings and apply on our lives, and apply with one another. Watch the news, connect with the world, do what we're supposed to do here in the world, in the physical body, but do not be part of it. What I'm trying to say is distance ourselves, learn from it, but distance ourselves from the negativity, from the negative things that are happening, and do more positive than the negative. We may find ourselves sometimes in moments of difficulties that it's like, oh, what is going on and all that. But remember, there's also a positive a work going on the other side, helping each one of us. And as St. Francis of Assisi said, we're being called to help, and we are equipped to help as well. We have received so much from one another, from Spiritism, from different reincarnations in different religions, that we can also expand this dawn of a new era in our planet. So, with that said, we would like to invite everyone to connect with our Master Jesus, to help us, dear Lord, redefine war, redefine the fight of our lives, to find encouragement, to change us first, the way we think, the way we approach ourselves, to identify our needs, our wants, and put aside what is not needed. Let us stick with the basics of the teachings that our Master Jesus brought to us. If we follow any other teachings, let us go to the core of it. And as Joanna de Angelis have reminded us, those who are suffering will create suffering. Those who are despairing will create despair. But we have a choice. We have a choice to be better beings, better than we were yesterday, and tomorrow, better than we are today. On this note, we ask that you bless each one of us. Bless our homes, our hearts, and the small wars, the all small arguments, the bickerings that are happening in our lives, be diminished by the light of our Master Jesus. And let there be this great excitement of renewal, of change for all of us, so that wars can be redefined, so that we can truly bring to our hands and our hearts and our minds the elements that St. Francis of Assisi have brought us: love, compassion, encouragement, indulgence, respect, kindness. With that, dear Lord, we're thankful for one another, for the opportunity to serve. and so be it.